Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me. I'm super excited to present my work. A special thank you to all of the co-authors for helping me become the researcher I am today. And I'm going to present to you an empirical study and evaluation of modern CAPTCHAs. So, I'll give you a little background, but I'm pretty sure all of you know what CAPTCHAs are. However, about 20 years ago, he proposed this as a win-win situation. It was hard AI problems, and the win-win was essentially either we find an easy way to attest to human presence, or we find an easy way to advance AI. And as time has progressed, CAPTCHA types have evolved, and now there are a lot of different types, so we wanted to study them. So our main research questions are, how long do humans take solving these different types of CAPTCHAs? What types do they prefer? And we wanted to also check if experimental context would affect the solving time. Furthermore, if demographics affect the solving time. And then after some of our initial results, we explored if abandonment is influenced by experimental context, which is something that we noticed during our study. So we initially motivate our study with a website inspection where we inspected Alexa's top 200 websites. We did account creation on all 200 websites on both Tor and Chrome incognito browsers to avoid any sort of session matching. And after we had done this, we, based on our results, had a selection criteria for our study of prevalence, diversity, complexity, and different types, trying to have a representative model of the current CAPTCHA landscape. So in our user study, we had people solve 10 different CAPTCHA varieties, and we would have them solve 2 different CAPTCHA V2 types, which is one of the most popular. We had it on 2 settings, easy and most secure. Notably, there can be an image or not an image, but always a behavioral box would be shown. We also looked at Arcos Labs, which is a new and upcoming technology, and they had a gamified version of orientation rotation, and they had a no JavaScript version, so we were trying to test for different situations that website operators might present themselves with. And a popular technology that's also claims to be a replacement for reCAPTCHA is HCAPTCHA, and we did an easy and hard version of that. Then to be representative of some different countries, we also picked one that is located in China, a G-test slider. And we went back to the classics with 3 different distorted text types, which you are all probably very familiar with. We tried to vary the difficulty, finding a simple one, a masked one, and a moving one in increasing difficulty. So our user study design had 4 main phases. Initially, there's an overview and instructions, and then we would perform a demographic collection. And then during the task phase, we would have them solve CAPTCHAs, and for the preference evaluation, it would be after the tasks, and we would also debrief certain ones based on if they were in a certain version of the study, which is based on the context, which I'll describe right now. So we decided that we wanted to have a control, which is done in a lot of behavioral experiments, but something that we noticed was lacking in a lot of CAPTCHA-based user studies. So we had 2 versions. One version was a direct version where we told people that they were solving CAPTCHAs, and the task phase was just them solving CAPTCHAs and clicking next to go through all 10 CAPTCHAs. After that, in parallel, we also did a contextualized version where we told people they were creating accounts and that we were studying account creation and that this had nothing to do with CAPTCHAs, and so when they clicked verify, it would show them a CAPTCHA, and this was to try and use some sort of deception to observe behavior in a more natural setting. So a little bit about the timeline and logistics. This occurred over a year from July 1st to September 1st, 2021 to 2022. And it was done on Ozturk with 1,400 participants, 700 of which were in the contextualized and 700 of which were in the direct. So let's get into some of our results. These are the preference results for CAPTCHAs, with the purple being the most enjoyable, and they are ranked in order of enjoyability, even though CAPTCHAs may not be the most enjoyable thing in the world. An interesting thing that we did discover about this is that preference doesn't align with solving time. So if you look at reCAPTCHA, it is the click version is the fastest, and it is the most preferred, because it probably has the least friction. However, G-test was the second most preferred. However, it had timing that was a lot slower than some of the other versions. And you can see that there's no direct pattern, as the right side is sorted based on the preferences. Then we get into some of the interesting results of our direct versus contextualized study. And so you're going to see on the x-axis solving time in 1 second buckets, and on the y-axis the number of participants. And the tan or orange represents the direct study, while the blue represents the contextualized study. And in the most significant forms, we noticed that there's a 57% difference in solving time if you tell somebody that they're solving a CAPTCHA or not. And this occurred in a couple situations. There's also one result where the easy image is 63%. However, there was no statistical significance to that. And everything else had statistical significance except for the two red circled objects. Then we wanted to explore demographics, and the most significant finding that we had was that, and this supported some previous research, as people increase in age, their CAPTCHA solving time also increases, meaning that people are a little bit slower as they get older to solve these CAPTCHAs. And you can see that there is a coefficient or a slope of 0.28 in some cases, meaning that people can be up to 30% slower based on their age. During our study, we noticed that there was a large amount of requests, however, not as many people completing it, so we figured that people were abandoning our sessions. So we had some questions and did a follow-up study, included in the original results now. But we asked how many Mturkers started, how many abandoned, if so, at what task in CAPTCHA, and did compensation have an effect on the abandonment? And we had 400 Mturkers complete this, 100 of which were in direct at base and double the base compensation, and the same for the contextualized. And so we had 574 who started, and that means 174 abandoned during the study. 50% abandoned in the contextualized study, meaning that when people realized that they were solving CAPTCHAs, they quit the study. And 25% did it in the direct, so some people, even knowing that they were participating in a CAPTCHA study, didn't even want to solve CAPTCHAs. And then for G-test, it was the most significant, making up 26% of overall abandonment. This may be because most of our participants were in the US, and this is probably a foreign technology to them. One of the most interesting things that we noticed, however, is that compensation had an inverse effect based on the context, meaning that when we paid more people in the contextualized version, we had less abandonment, but when we paid them more in the direct study, we had more abandonment. So even if you pay people more money, they don't want to solve CAPTCHAs, apparently. But we think that, abandonment is something that should be investigated more in the future. One of our final interesting results is on attacks on CAPTCHAs. Now, we didn't perform any attacks on CAPTCHAs ourselves, but we did a very thorough research of the related literature, and we found that in pretty much all cases, especially for contextualized cases, humans are slower than bots at solving CAPTCHAs, and they're also less accurate. And this leads me to the conclusion, and thank you very much for attending this talk. I'll take any questions now. I'm happy to discuss my work. Thank you.